Well, welcome to Norfolk. My name is Kevin Tagliaferri, and I've been asked to moderate this forum tonight. Just real quickly, I am the former DTC chair from Bellingham, also former state committee member. I'm also an attorney in Medway, and I have been involved in politics one way or another for quite some time, including an unsuccessful run for state rep a few years ago. Anyway, that is me. We're not here for me. We're here for 3 candidates for Governor's Council. We have Teresa Civil. Tamisha. I'm sorry, Tamisha.
Glad to meet you.
Okay. And Muriel Kramer. It is Muriel, right?
It is.
Okay. And David Rezovitz. David?
Hello.
So each candidate has been provided with the forum/debate rules, so they're familiar with the time frames that they're going to have. They will mostly have 1 minute to respond to questions, and they will receive a prompt when their 1 minute is up. Otherwise, they have other instructions and rules for the forum debate. We're going to start the debate with 3 questions that I will ask. That will be followed by 1 question each from each of the candidates to the other candidates. And then it will be followed by audience questions that should have already been submitted by, I believe, there was a recent deadline, was it 5 p.m. on Monday? So we have those questions, so we're not taking any live ones. We've got the ones that came in by the deadline. So we are going to start with 1 minute openings by each one of the candidates. I am not providing bios, so please, each of you feel free to give a quick bio of yourself before anything else that you'd like to do. And so we'll just start with Tamisha Civil. You're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Tamisha Civil. I'm running for Governor's Council, and I'm running because I want to stand against injustice to make our system fairer for everyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This has been inspiring for me because my first cousin was incarcerated for 27 years for a crime he did not commit. He was exonerated in 2021 from all his charges, so I'm running for the injustice that are currently happening right now in our system. I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. I have a master's degree from Northeastern University in criminal justice and leadership. I spent decades in the courtrooms with judges, police officers, defense attorneys, clerk magistrates, working alongside of them. I help people get back into the community as an associate probation officer safely, and I help people with mental health treatment, substance abuse, and I also, I also help women who have been battered by domestic violence with their children. I've worked in juvenile court, substance abuse court, mental health court, and veterans, helping our veterans preserve their records when they finish fighting for our country and then they get into trouble for trying to adapt in the community. We want to make sure when they encounter the criminal justice system that we get them the treatment that they need so we can preserve their records. I've also worked for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in the Major Felony Unit, where I help victims navigate into the criminal justice system to make sure that no one is left behind and that they get the resources that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamisha. Muriel?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you all. Thank you for making this possible for us. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Muriel Kramer. I am also running for Governor's Council, as you know, and I have been serving in elected or appointed capacities in public service in Hopkinton for 20 years. My husband and I are both United States Air Force veterans, and we've lived in Hopkinton for the last 30 years, raising our 6 children there. I'm now a licensed clinical social worker. I went back to school when my youngest were in high school so that I could actually pursue a career in social justice. I started in homelessness services in Boston and Cambridge. I now work in healthcare consulting for Medicare, Medicaid, and uninsured populations. Much of my work is in consumer engagement to improve service delivery and advance equity for the people who are affected by the different systems, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's the legal system, whether it's the housing system. And we are, as you all know, we're watching in real time as the United States Supreme Court wreaks havoc on our rights and our safety. So appointments to the legal system matter. We need appointees that will protect a woman's reproductive rights, protect LGBTQIA+ rights, protect workers' rights, and more. So we want to appoint judges that will not only protect what we already see as important here in Massachusetts and for the country, but judges that will look to understand and address the corrosive impact of racism and implicit bias, and judges and clerk magistrates that are prepared to move us forward to correct for that impact. Today in Massachusetts, people of color are 4 times more likely to be represented in jails and prisons than their white counterparts, proportionately to the racial demographics in the state. That's something that we really need to tackle and address and fix. Inequities in our system have happened. Is that it? I'm sorry.
Go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We can work to correct this, elevate restorative justice practices and treatment options and diversion from the carceral system. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel. David?
Hi, everyone. David Reservitz, Democratic candidate for Governor's Council. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you, but for those of you who I have not met yet, I am originally from Brockton, Massachusetts. I then moved with my family to Easton, and now I live in Needham, all 3 great towns in this district. I am an attorney. I've been a trial attorney for almost 30 years. I started off in the 90s, and I was a prosecutor for a short stint and then became a public defender, contract public defender. When I came to the public defender's office, it was during a Republican administration with Governor Mitt Romney. He and his staff sought to cut funding for public indigent defendants. So I found myself becoming politically active within the legal field. I have never been a political candidate in any other format. But we went up to the State House from Brockton. We fought Governor Romney on that, and we were successful. And I started my political career within the legal field. I was then elected the president of the Plymouth County Bar Association, and later, the proudest moment in my legal career was I was appointed by Governor Deval Patrick to his Judicial Nominating Commission. And I spent the better part of his 2 terms on his Judicial Nominating Commission, or JNC. That is the first process where an attorney who is seeking to become a judge would go and be thoroughly vetted prior to being sent to, if successful, to the Governor's Council. It's something that I loved doing. I was passionate about it, and I'm looking to become your next Governor's Counselor to get back to work in that field. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. And
Can I ask about the signals, just so you go at
45 seconds and then 6 to the end.
Okay,
So
great,
it's
thank you.
45,
Got it.
145 and end.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and I've also been told, can you move your microphones a little closer to each one of you, because they're having trouble picking up the audio. So one of the main responsibilities of a governor's counselor includes voting to approve judges and clerks, also pardons, commutations, and parole issues. So first question, I'm going to start with Muriel on this. And this has to do with pardons and commutations on the elderly, the infirmed, perhaps even terminally ill, and the physically challenged, possibly immobile. all these prisoners that are currently in our system. What are your thoughts on early commutations or pardons?
So I am 100% in favor of considering pardons, commutations for anybody who is incarcerated, who is elderly, ill, or infirm, and certainly can no longer be considered a threat to society. But more than that, it's a measure of our humanity. We have many people incarcerated today that have been there for a very long time, and they, need to be humanely released and helped to find housing and supports, and be supported in their either later years or their later stages of illness. I would also say that people who are incarcerated for illness that can be treated, like substance use disorder or mental health issues, I would be in favor of considering those individuals to be released for treatment as well.
Thank you, Muriel. David?
Thank you. I would also be supportive towards pardons and commutations of any elderly or infirm candidates, but I think that for purposes of the Governor's Council, if the governor, the sitting governor, were to propose such a pardon or a commutation and then advance it to the Governor's Council, the job of the council would be to investigate all of the facts surrounding the offense. Why is that person incarcerated? What does their record look like? Are there any factors that may have driven that individual to a criminal activity, such as mental health issues or substance abuse, that I would likely favor pardons or commutations in favor of rehabilitation. But it's also important to look at the entire case. When there's a crime, usually there's a victim. So it is also relevant that the Governor's Counselor representing the people of this district also get in touch with any victims that were involved in the crimes affecting these people and see what their position might be on that selection. I see the yellow towel, so thank you.
Thanks, David. Tamisha?
Thank you. As an associate probation officer, what we do is with criminal offenders, we always review their record and we provide it to the judge. So in this case, I would be in favor of pardons and commutations for elderlies. However, we would need to assess, while incarceration, what treatment have they been getting? What rehabilitation can they use to be able to get back into the community? We need to make sure we analyze and assess, is this person can go back into society without reoffending? What treatment is set in place? What position that we know that this person, if once he gets out or he or she gets out, will they be more likely to offend? So I think it's important to assess and to review the criminal record and to make sure that we have resource and access available for this individual that's looking to come out, and to make sure that we have treatment programs and housing so they're not lingering on their own once they get released.
Okay, thank you, Tamisha. Okay, next question. I'm going to start with you, David. The Governor's Council, of course, has the vote on the Governor's recommendations for judgeships. So with that in mind, how much would a judge's or a person's temperament have to weigh in for your vote to go one way or another? Talk about their temperament, please.
Temperament is an extremely important quality that we look for when vetting and evaluating attorneys to potentially become a judge. As you know, I was on the Judicial Nominating Commission for Deval Patrick, so I'm the only candidate in the race that has actual experience in vetting judicial candidates. And We would meet every Tuesday night. It's a pro bono position that made up of, it was 21 lawyers under the Deval-Patrick administration. It's now 29 lawyers under the Healy administration. But we would meet for hours vetting these candidates. And one of the terms that was used over and over and over again was judicial temperament. Do they have the right judicial temperament? You know, a lot of people think that judges are just the most successful lawyers. I know a lot of successful lawyers that have great trial showmanship, and they are not necessarily good candidates for judges. Judges have to be, they have to be fair, they have to be patient, and they have to be compassionate. They also have to be smart, and they have to be experienced, and they have to have connections to the people in the community. And I think that temperament is embodied by a lot of those important qualities.
Thank you, David. Tamisha?
As an associate probation officer that sits in a courtroom 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, I've been able to analyze judges that sit on the bench based on the cases that they've heard, based on how they react towards people that come in and seeking for help. Temperament is the key, but I know as a counselor, vetting is not only what we need to pay attention to. Oftentimes, when someone is looking to be in a position, they will say things to make you believe they can save the world. However, when you're sitting in a courtroom and you listen to a judge ask victims, say for example, domestic violence, questions over and over in front of people in the public that can make the woman feel ashamed, we need to understand that judges know the impacts that they have, their temperament, how they react towards someone that they're asking a question. When families are coming into the courtroom seeking Section 35 because their child or a loved one is impacted by substance abuse, we need to know what kind of judges and responses that they're giving. What do they know about the community of substance abuse? What do they know about the community of domestic violence? We need to make sure that judges understand the community and that it's a people's court. So temperament is the key. However, we need to make sure that when we're vetting judges, they are actually putting the work.
Thank you, Tamisha. Muriel?
Yeah, thank you very much. Temperament is huge. Experience and temperament. Temperament really goes to the way individuals interact with other individuals, and I think it's really key, particularly when so many of our judges do not necessarily share experiences with the people that are in front of them, with lives and concerns that they don't necessarily connect with personally. So temperament, you know, I'll be looking for judges certainly that are smart and thoughtful and compassionate. And I often use the term individuals that show a growth mindset, individuals that show a willingness to lean in and learn as what we know changes, as they meet different people, as different people come before them. I've been, participating, watching or attending the Governor's Council meetings since running, and there are some judge candidates out there that have lived experience that it's really interesting and wonderful to see. So I'd be looking for judges open to sharing their own personal experiences as well.
Thank you, Muriel. And the next question is going to be for you, Tamisha, and the others after. Knowing what you do know about how the Governor's Council operates, if you were elected, do you see yourself trying to make any changes to either the process or the makeup of the council?
Absolutely. As the Governor's Council, it is my job to make sure that judicial nominees have representation. We know that for 244 years, there's never been a Democratic woman of color on the council. So representation is the key to the judicial nominee that is looking to help that community. That's one. Evaluating the legal qualifications of the judicial nominee, making sure that they're experienced, they understand the impacts that people are going through in the community, that they have ethical and standards, making sure that there is a partnership within the organizations that is along the lines of the community that will be able to serve the people that the judicial nominees are looking to hear cases in. We need to make sure that judges understand the impacts of their decision. Judges can make good decisions. They can turn your life they can change your life for good, but they can also change your life upside down. And I want to make sure what happened to my cousin does not happen to anyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you, Tamisha. Muriel?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I do hope that we see some changes on the Governor's Council, and I hope to be a rather constructive champion for change. I think that we have counselors that are sitting now that are really interested in the impacts of racism, the impacts of illness like substance use disorder and mental health issues, and I really hope that I can bring some constructive, using the word challenging in all the right ways, challenging conversations forward, because change is challenging. I know that I have expertise in change management, and I know that we can improve together, and I would advocate for more transparency on the Governor's Council. I'd advocate for education, not just for appointees and candidates. I hope that they're open to professional education in ways that will help them, but I hope the Governor's counselors will be open to education as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Muriel. David?
Thank you. As far as changes to the Governor's Council, legally it would take an act of legislature to change the rules of the council. But in terms of bringing change as a particular elected governor's counselor, I certainly feel that it is crucial that we continue to be progressive and prioritize the judiciary in Massachusetts now more than ever. I think we all know that. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, it's on all my literature, I refuse to vote for a candidate that doesn't support a woman's right to choose. I am not fond of minimum mandatory incarceration. That being said, the judge's role will not be to change the law, but it will be to interpret and apply the law. The good news is here in Massachusetts is we have been leaders in change. Things are not done the old way. We can be proud of what we've done in terms of diversity. We have a woman as a governor, a woman as a lieutenant governor, a woman attorney general. The highest ranking justice in our great state, Justice Kimberly Budd, the Chief Justice of the SJC, is an African American woman. So we already have movement in the right direction. We just need to keep moving in the right direction. When candidates come to the Governor's Council, they have already been vetted by the Judicial Nominating Commission and then sent to the council.
Yeah, I see it. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are at the point of the forum where candidates can ask questions of each other. So I'm going to start with you, Muriel, if you are prepared to ask a question of each one of your opponents tonight. Thank you.
So let me just, I assumed we would ask the same question of both?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah, okay. My question is this. Knowing that we have deep impacts from racism and implicit bias in the legal system, what do you see that we can do as Governor's Council members to ensure that judges and other appointees are going to effectively engage in righting the ship and drive in measurable ways a more equitable system?
And that is?
To both. It's the
Okay.
same question to both.
Ladies before Jenna.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was just trying to process what you were saying.
I'll repeat it. I'm sorry. Knowing that what we know about race, the effects of racism and bias in the system, how do we as Governor Council members work to ensure judges and other appointees are going to effectively engage in righting the ship and drive measurable change and ways to improve and make a more equitable system?
I would say transparency. We need transparency all across the board. We need to know who we are vetting to come on the council. We need to know what kind of ideologies they have. We need to know what kind of organizations they've been part of and what they know about what people are actually going through in the community. I think it's important. Oftentimes we we hear about a nominee being on the judicial, being nominated, but we don't know enough about them. We don't know if they've been reprimanded before, or if they've had some kind of issue along the way, or losing their license, their law license. So I think it's important that we have transparency, we know who we are nominating, and that is accessible to the people in the public.
David?
Thank you. I think it's crucially important during the due diligence and the vetting process to really get an understanding as to what type of human beings these candidates are. We look at their records. We want to make sure that they are experienced attorneys that know how to run a courtroom and know how to keep track of a trial with two adversarial attorneys and parties that are really being impacted. But at the same time, we have that opportunity in the council to learn about these individuals as people, to make sure that they share ideologies that are going to keep the Commonwealth's judiciary moving in the direction that I think we all agree from a political standpoint on those ideologies. So I think that's a crucial part of the vetting process, that if the due diligence is done properly, we can control it. And let's keep in mind, when a judge is appointed, they're appointed to a mandatory retirement age of 70. So it's very important that we make these decisions and we get them right.
Thank you, David. And David, are you prepared to ask? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Having been involved in the judicial vetting process in the past, what I'm curious to know from you throughout your life and your experiences, and including your time and over this past 9 months that we've been preparing this campaign, do you have a certain judge, either in the probate, superior district, housing court, board of industrial accidents, that you think is a model judge that would influence your questioning and your decisions if you were seated as a counselor for the district?
Okay. Muriel, go ahead.
Sure. So when I think of judges, it's not a sitting judge now, but it's Judge Gans, who passed away not too long ago, and he was a real champion for justice. I think that a few of the candidates that I've seen, there's an individual, Mr. McInerney, who has lived experience with poverty and trauma growing up as a child. So I think about people who either champion or lead with humility or have lived experience they can share, or all of those things. So I really do hope, actually, I appreciate the question, I really do hope that, oh, my apologies, that is my phone. Wow. Sorry. Wow, that's it.
It's got to be one of the kids.
Whoops. Gosh, that's a human moment there. Oh, my goodness.
You're not going to take the call?
My apologies, everybody. It's an alarm, actually. It's an alarm. My fault. I lost my train of thought there. But I really do want to see judges, I'll go back to Judge Gans, who really do look to move the needle for people who appear before him in a way that is constructive and just and kind and persistently. He was a champion for change, and that's what I hope to look for people.
Thanks, Muriel. Tamisha?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I would say former juvenile judge, Leslie Harris, who, by the way, endorsed me on my campaign. He started off to be a probation officer, then went on to become an attorney, and then was appointed to be a judge by Deval Patrick. And what I love about him is that he focused on our young people, the youth. Those are the people who are going to be the next generation, that we have a responsibility to make sure that when they come encounter with the criminal justice system, that there are system in place and resources for them to be able to have a second chance. When we look at our political climate right now, we see the hatred, we see what's going on, violence against each other, but he's one of the models that I follow, and then I am appreciative of his endorsement, but he's definitely someone I look up to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamisha. All right, we're going to move on to questions that were submitted.
I didn't ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Tamisha?
My question is, and it's based on ethics, how do you feel about an attorney counselor, governor counselor, appointing an attorney that they know of to become a judge, and then going before them in a courtroom to hear a case? How do you guys feel about that?
Would you like me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. It's a reality. It's a large, as an attorney for 30 years almost, it's not a small legal community. So a lot of the lawyers don't know each other, but in smaller pockets of the district, say in the Rentham District Court, the Stoughton District Court, the one courtroom courthouses, we bump into each other on a regular basis. Real professional judges are able to be unbiased. They know most of the attorneys that come before them, but good judges are simply unbiased, and they judge the case on the evidence. When I was on the JNC, I vetted a lot of judges and then appeared before them regularly, and I didn't receive any preferential treatment. If anything, they may have been a little harder on me, just to make sure that everything was above board. So I think that if we counselors make the right choices for qualified attorneys to become judges, then they will professionally keep all biases aside.
Yeah, thanks, Tamisha. So I think that it's tricky, because even though communities are large, they're also small. So implicit bias does impact everybody. And I think that we have to make sure we're taking steps to account for bias and not just assuming that it doesn't exist. Ethics are incredibly important, and I know that people who are attorneys and judges broadly would agree with me wholeheartedly. I think that when it comes to our personal experiences, we have to really take into account the fact, if we know somebody, that we know them, how we know them, and how we think about them. Because whether we like it or not, people who we know and are in community with and like professionally, we have a tendency to favor without thinking about it. So I think it's a really great question. It's one of the reasons why I think that, honestly, someone who isn't an attorney is a good advocate on the Governor's Council.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go to the online questions that were submitted. I'm going to start with you, Tamisha. So question number 1. Oh, here it is. Describe your ideal judicial nominee using only 3 words.
Fair, impartial, and ethical.
Okay, Muriel?
Diverse, ethical, curious.
David?
Experienced, competent, compassionate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Muriel, we'll start with you on this question. How does a judicial nominee's ideology affect your approach to voting for or against?
So, as a human being and as a social worker, I understand that people are very complicated. And so a person's ideology can mean so many things. I wish I could ask a clarifying question there, but I can't. I think that our role is not to show up at the Governor's Council board meeting as ourselves, but as a representative of the people that we serve. And it's our obligation to entertain and interview and give people, in layman's terms, the benefit of the doubt, or in social work terms, assume positive intent, right? So I think that I will approach every person with an open mind. I will be curious, right? I will want to know why people feel and believe and do and act as they do, if it somehow is different than what I understand, but I hope I'm fair.
Thank you. David?
I take the ideology question to be political, in that I want to vet candidates to make sure that we don't appoint any judges that don't support a woman's right to choose. I know I'm the only person sitting at this table that's not a woman, but I am a father of 3 20-year-old daughters. I was many of you know, a widower at a time in my life, and a father and a mother raising young daughters, and it's something that I've always been very passionate about. So ideology is crucial, that we make sure that we have the right and like-minded individuals applying the law to the people of this district.
Thanks, David. Tamisha?
Ideology is very important. It must align with the constituents in District 2 and overall the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It is very important that the nominee knows and understand that it is my right to choose, and it is my right to choose what I want to do with my body, and it should align with everyone else. And it is important for their ideology to align with the LGBTQ community. This is 2024. Nobody's rights should be impacted at all. So their ideology must reflect the constituents and align with the people that they are serving, because it's a people's court at the end of the day, not their court.
Thanks, Tamisha. Next question, going to start with you, David. What role should victims' statements play in parole or pardon hearings, and how do you balance that with the final decision as to whether or not to recommend granting that parole?
Well, we touched on this a little bit. I think it's part of the system properly to hear from the victims. The victims have to have a voice in every in every legal situation, and for that reason, as a defense attorney, I work essentially against the prosecutor's office, but a wing of that office is the Victim Witness Advocate's office, and they will be speaking on behalf of those victims, and sometimes the victims will want to stand up in court and make an impact statement. So it is part of the process that the victims be allowed to be heard, but sometimes a judge, and a courageous judge, will impose a sentence upon a defendant charged with a crime that is less severe than a victim wants. And that takes courage for a judge to do that, to choose rehabilitation when the victims want incarceration. And I favor a judge that will do that if it is done within reason.
Thanks, David. Tamisha?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again, please?
Yes. What role should victim statements play in pardon decisions, and how do you balance that out with your recommendation as to whether or not someone gets pardoned or parole?
Okay, thank you for that question.
Victim statements, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been privileged. I've been privileged to work both with victims as well as offenders. I've worked as a victim witness advocate for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and I'm also an associate probation officer for the Trial Court of Massachusetts. And I had the privilege of attending hearings, parole board hearings with victims that need to know that we understand the impacts of the crime that has done to them in their life, and how it's affected them along the way. There's some people who have not moved forward, but I've also been in parole board hearings where people have been denied for crimes that they have not committed, such as myself. But I am very victim-driven. If we're going to let an offender out, we do need to hear the impacts that a victim is going, and the victim statement needs to be read out loud, and the judge needs to understand, or the parole board hearing needs to understand the impacts of this victim's life and how this person was able to, how this victim was supposed to move forward, excuse me.
Thank you, Tamisha. Mira?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. So what we know is that the impact on the victim is a critical piece of understanding how to move forward. And part of our role in an exchange like that, I do this kind of work as a social worker often, is to validate what people have experienced. I think that we have to weigh what the professionals have to say, what the victims and the family members have to say, and also the circumstances that surround the individual who is being considered for pardon, where they were, where they are, what kind of services and growth they have experienced. So I would weigh heavily the consideration of the professionals in the decisions. There will be social workers involved. There are legal, lawyers involved. So I would want to consider everything very thoughtfully.
Okay, thanks, Muriel. We all set?
Oh, sorry. I thought I answered that one already.
No,
Yes,
you
sir?
did.
You did,
So,
you did.
Muriel, I'm going to start with you
Okay.
on the next one. Are you involved in any outside advocacy groups from which you would bring that ideology to the Governor's Council? And how would you balance out your those beliefs with your role as a Governor's Counselor?
So I'm not currently involved with advocacy groups, but I have been, and I certainly support advocacy groups like the Massachusetts Bail Fund, like Families for Justice and Healing. I've done some work advocating for the prison building moratorium so that we don't just build more prisons, at least right now. And part of the reason that I work in healthcare actually is that I preserve my ability to be personally involved. So I have been to the State House to testify on a couple issues. Bail was one of them. The prison moratorium was one of them. And I work in healthcare so that I can advocate within the boundaries of change for the criminal justice system. And I really appreciate people who work so hard to elevate the voices of folks that are deeply impacted and negatively impacted by folks involved with the legal system. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Thank you. Yeah, I am involved in an advocacy group through the Committee for Public Counsel, or CPCS, which provides funding for indigent defendants charged with crimes who can't afford an attorney. I'm the past president of the Pilgrim County Bar Advocate Program based out of Brockton, which has a large population of indigent criminal defendants. So it's an organization that has always been dear to my heart. I think it's crucially important, and I'm proud to say that the stigma that some court-appointed lawyers get is completely false. The public defenders that work hard to defend indigent defendants get some of the best results for those individuals statewide.
Thanks, David. Tamisha?
Hi, thank you. I'm a commissioner. I'm a commissioner for the status of women and girls for the Eastern region. What we do is we work on policies We work on policies on women issues, LGBTQ rights, racial justice issues, and one of the things that we are so happy about is Governor Maura Healey working on equal pay for women. So what we do is we take these policies and bring it forward to our legislators so that our legislators can sign them into bills and making sure that women's issues are not being impacted in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you. Tamisha, I'm going to go to you on this one. Describe a time when you had to make an unpopular but principled decision. That's a tough one.
That's a great question. As an associate probation officer, I work with offenders who have committed their time, and I have to supervise them on probation. If they're battling with substance abuse, majority of the time, there could be a possibility of relapse. Now, when I'm supervising them and they're having issues to complete their substance abuse treatment program, if I can't find them, if I can't hear from them, if there's no kind of communication, I'm obligated to go before a judge and ask for a warrant for them to be apprehended. And one of the things that is difficult for me to do is knowing that this person is battling with a disease, but in order to protect them from harming themselves and others in the community, I have to file a motion to have the defendant to be, file a motion for a warrant to be issued in front of a judge so he can be apprehended and help him to get into a treatment program.
Okay, thank you. Muriel?
Let's see, in my recent work as a select board member in Hopkinton, I was the chair, and we had a very controversial circumstance come before us. We had an open hearing to decide whether or not we would fire a police officer because of a policy infraction. The issue surrounding it is very emotional and very difficult. And the community was hugely invested on both sides. I took the lone vote to not fire the individual. He was, of course, fired, but I took the lone vote not to fire the individual and to work hard to find a path back, understanding the violations of policy and work to restore the person to their career.
Thanks. David?
Thank you. The first thing that comes to my mind, most of all, when I was a young lawyer, I was appointed to represent a young man charged with some very serious domestic violence abuse charges. And in preparing the defense, the defendant maintained his innocence, but we had a lot of lengthy meetings in the courthouse and in my office, which were all protected by the attorney-client privilege, until one point he made what I determined to be a threat of future harm toward the victim, who was his romantic partner. I considered that to be a real appreciable threat. It is not protected by the attorney-client privilege, and I reported it, and he was arrested for it, and it was a difficult decision to make as his attorney.
Thanks, David. Okay, last audience question. David, I'm going to start with you on this one. And some might say this could be the toughest question of all. Name one strength of each of your opponents.
I think it's easy. I think that, I'll start with Tamisha. I think that Tamisha is extremely passionate.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And I have gotten to know Muriel, and I find her to be extremely compassionate.
Tamisha?
I find Muriel to be dedicated. She's very dedicated into her social work and the resources that she wants to provide for people that she comes encounter with. David, very smart, and he knows his work as an attorney.
Thank you. Muriel?
Man, you're going to think that I'm just copying them, but I wrote them down.
You have to show them.
So, yeah. Prove it. Did you just say prove it? Because I can't.
I know, I believe you. I believe you.
So I find David very smart and very professional, very approachable. And I find Tamisha extremely invested, passionate, I use that word too, and very, I'm going to say dedicated as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel. And that concludes the online audience questions. So, Muriel, we're going to start with you as we move into the closing statements.
Great. I just want to thank everybody for...
I've got 1 minute here. 2 minutes is fine, I don't care.
2 minutes. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, for paying attention to this somewhat lesser-known spot on the ballot and really investing. I think that we're very fortunate to have 4 really terrific candidates for this role because it has elevated the conversation about the Governor's Council and what can happen, what can be part of this process. When I went back to school, to have a career in social justice. And when this position came open, one of my kids famously said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, this is your spot." So I feel like the Governor's Council really speaks to my advocacy position. I really believe in the power of people to be restored. I really believe in the power of this great Commonwealth to do a better job addressing people's needs, pursuing restorative justice, elevating treatment options as opposed to incarceration. These things can work. They do work. The science behind substance use disorder treatment is nearly as old as I am. We just need the political will to put it into play for people. We know that racism is a big factor. We need the political will to make the change. And we have the tools. It's hard. We have to ask the hard questions. So I just want to assure you that I will be persistent, professional, but unapologetic as I approach the appointment process and all the work of the Governor's Council to make sure that people who aren't typically well represented will be considered and better represented as we go about our business on the Governor's Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel Kramer. David?
Thank you. Thank you again to everyone for coming and for your questions. I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years, and it's more than half my life. It's all I've ever done. It's all I've ever really wanted to do. I have never run for political office before. I don't consider myself a politician. This is the only office that I will ever seek. I have experience in vetting judges, and the vast majority of the work conducted by the Governor's Council is vetting judges. Is that me now? You know,
That's what I call a hat trick right there.
sorry, does that count against me?
We're all tied.
Anyway, I'm passionate about the work, I really am, and I want to make sure that our district, our 37 towns, gets the best possible judges that are going to affect our lives and our families' lives and our neighbors' lives on a daily basis. It could be a matter of liberty and on the criminal side, which my opponents talk about passionately, but there are so many other important factors that judges impact people's lives on. We have major civil disputes that affect people's lives in the Superior Court and the District Court. We have housing matters that I've handled thousands of. I tried the first jury trial in the Southeast Regional Housing Court 10 plus years ago. There are the plight of injured workers in the Board of Industrial Accidents. I promise to have an open dialogue with the labor unions. I'm a big supporter of labor, and that is a crucial job of the Governor's Council to make sure that the Board of Industrial Accidents judges are supportive of labor. And obviously, the women's right to choose that we have all agreed is so important. So this is something that I'm passionate about. I'm ready to get to work on day one, and I can't wait to get back into the world of selecting judges if you will so elect me on the 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, David Rezovitz. Tamisha.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out to come and listen to me. From day one, when I started this campaign, I've made a vow that I would not leave anyone behind. I understand what it means when it's a people's court. I've worked over a decade working alongside of judges, clerk magistrates, police officers, assistant district attorneys, defense attorneys, and I've been able to communicate with our constituents around District 2. I'm a product of Dover-Sherborne Regional High School. I'm an alumni, and I've been able to develop experiences, life experiences from the time I was young till now, to make sure that anyone who gets encountered with the criminal legal system, that they get a fair shot. We need someone who is deeply understands the importance of combating injustice. I have the life experience, I have the professional expertise, and the vision and the future for District 2. And that's why I'm running to be your next Governor's Council. Please vote for me, Tamisha Civil.
Thank you, Tamisha Civil. And I have a few remarks to make, but before I do, I think that these 3 candidates deserve a big hand. And if I didn't mention it before, they were not provided these questions in advance, and so I think that shows how well they can think on their feet as well. Before we close out, I just wanted to recognize a few people that are involved with the Democratic Party. Laura Davidson is Bellingham DTC Chair. Laura, can you just give a wave? Andrew LaBerge, Plainville DTC Chair and State Committee. Becca Cornett, Medfield DTC Chair. John Bowman, Norfolk DTC Chair and State Committee. Julie Garland, Rentham DTC Chair. Paul Yorkis, State Committee. Jackie Curtis, State Committee. If you are from any of those towns and you'd like to get involved, talk to those chairs. They can tell you when they meet and how you can get involved. This is a big political year. You don't want to let it pass by and not be able to say that you did something. We're all very, very busy, but we're not too busy to work for our democracy. And joining your town Democratic Town Committee is a great way to do it. Working on a campaign is a great way to do it. You guys came here tonight. That shows that you care enough. So I want to thank you for that very much. And, well, thank you. Have a good drive home.